Okay, we're live on air. You're not going to hear much from Lady Empress this evening because I am handing it over to two wonderful up-and-coming presenters on Lurton Urban Radio. Just to give you some background, the first Tuesday of every month, and we're really excited about this at the radio station as well as in the local community. So the first Tuesday of every month, we will have attentive talking to representatives from Bedfordshire Police Force. And we're hoping that in shows to come, this show is going to be very interactive and respectful. A whole heap of topics are going to be asked by the attentive crew to Bedfordshire Police, and we're hoping in weeks and months to come that people text in their questions, interact with the show and get to know their local police force. But that's all you're going to hear from me, hopefully, for the next hour. We're here until 9 o'clock on the dedication show, attentive talking to Bedfordshire Police.
Hello and welcome to the Public and the Police on the first Tuesday of every month. So I'm your host Maytab, and today I'm joined by my other host.
Hi, I'm Kat.
So today we're joined by 3 members from the Bedfordshire Police. So if you'd all like to introduce yourselves to our audience, please. So starting off with Dee.
Good evening, folks. I'm Dee Perkins. I'm a Detective Chief Superintendent and I'm the Head of Public Protection and Crime in Bedfordshire, which means I have responsibility for the crime teams and the public protection teams, which is child and adult protection, domestic abuse, and I'm also the Force's strategic lead for male violence against women and girls.
Thank you for that. And moving on to Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel Glendenning and I'm a Superintendent at Bedfordshire Police. I'm currently the Chief Constable's Staff Officer, so that basically means that I do a lot of work for him, deal with his correspondence, advise him on certain meetings that he's going to, and assist him and the rest of the Force Executive with various things. I have a number of different skill sets as well, so I'm a Tactical Firearms Commander, which means that I can deal with firearms incidents. I'm a Public Orders Commander, so that means that I'll deal with public order situations, or I might, for example, deal with the Luton Carnival in terms of make sure it's safe from a public perspective, and I'm also the Tactical Lead for male violence against women and girls.
Thank you. And Phil.
Good evening, my name is Philip Eaton. I'm a Project Manager for the Police and Crime Commissioner, responsible for anything to do with policing and contact. But at the moment my priority project is Safer Streets, which is focusing on violence against women and girls in public spaces.
So we're going to just go straight into the first question, and if we did not mention before, the topic of today's show is male violence against women and girls. So I'm going to direct this question at all 3 of you, and you can take it in turns, or whichever one of you have an answer first can answer. So the first question: what are some examples of male violence towards women and girls that you have encountered in your as your role as a police officer?
I think really the most predominant ones that we encounter is within domestic abuse. Domestic abuse counts for the majority of offending that's committed by men against women. It's really tricky to deal with as well, because obviously the majority of it is committed behind closed doors, but there is also a lot that we're doing to try and prevent as much as it from happening. But I would say that's probably the biggest proportion of offences that we see in regards to male violence against women and girls.
And I just wanted to add, like, since Corona, have you seen an increase in that? Because obviously we were all locked in our houses for a number of months. So I think it must have been terrifying for like women who, you know, must have like been basically trapped and had, you know, were told if you leave your house you're going to be, Corona's coming for you basically. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean the government obviously, when they put the restrictions in place in relation to coronavirus, they put one of the exemptions of obviously staying inside was if you don't feel safe then you can go out. But it said there certainly was a rise because there was a lot of hidden harm that occurred over that period in time. I know that Dee's obviously seen that in terms of her performance management in terms of DA.
Yeah, so for us, throughout COVID-19, the biggest worry for us is how do people access services. And we already know that domestic abuse takes place behind closed doors, and COVID-19 exacerbated that. because people couldn't get out, people couldn't report it. In terms of a rise in demand, we didn't see as much as we were expecting to, but I do feel that there was probably quite a proportion of domestic abuse that didn't get reported, which is a real worry for us, because if we don't know about it, then we can't help those that need us the most.
And I think it's just also really important to say that obviously we're talking about male violence against women and girls, and we're talking about domestic abuse, and I think people predominantly think that's physical abuse, but actually large majority of DA and male violence against women and girls is actually, you know, that mental abuse and that coercive control and people just being made to do things that they absolutely don't want to.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. I think today when I came into sort of the studio, I was literally just thinking about physical abuse and violence. I wasn't exactly thinking about that sort of emotional or mental abuse that women can face as a result of these men. So, I mean, in your opinions, I always like asking why. Do you guys have any sort of, I don't know, explanations or understanding as to why men behave in those certain ways towards women? Like, do you know what creates that, if it's a result of, I don't know, the environment that they were brought up in, or do you think it's sometimes innate within them?
From a perspective, we do a lot of engagements with the public and we get views from them. A lot of it is, well, I want to play up to my mates, I want to look good with my mates, and sometimes it is about that environment they're brought up in, and it's a learned behaviour, and it's very difficult to then turn that behaviour around, because actually it's seen as normal behaviour. And again, with domestic violence, people who witness it as children tend to be abusers in later life. So again, it's that learned behaviour, and it's about educating young people about what's right and what's wrong in healthy relationships. So yeah, I think there's a mixture of both, and it depends on what your background is.
You need to consider, you've probably heard of it before, but adverse childhood experiences. If you grow up in a household where there is domestic abuse and domestic violence, are we normalising behaviours? Are we signposting our young men to believe that that's a normal way to treat people? And unfortunately, there are people in some communities that turn a blind eye to domestic abuse, and that's what we need to stop, and we need to encourage communities to be strong together and to have that trust and confidence to be able to come forward so that we can deal with it. So I do think a lot of it is in regards to learnt behaviour. I think social media has a massive part to play. Some of the influences, there's quite a lot out there at the moment that's quite topical, and I won't mention his name.
I was actually going to say, yeah.
You're providing more airtime and more publicity to it. But our youngsters are influenced by this, and we really need to stop and ask those questions as to why we feel in today's society that it is actually acceptable to be promoting individuals.
Yeah, oh my God.
I can't believe
100%. 100%. I think I was having a conversation with someone the other day. She's a bit older than me, and she was saying to me about this person. I'm not even going to mention his name, but
the one that shall not be named.
I know, it's like Voldemort.
Yeah,
we'll just call it Voldemort. So I think she was saying to me that some of the things he says, he means it as a joke. However, young men are idolising it, and I think some people, especially when you're at that young age, even if he's so-called joking or whatever, personally I don't think it's the type of thing to joke about when your platform is as massive as that, and you know that you have young boys who are following you who are really impressionable. But she was saying that it's so easy for them to then sort of take on these beliefs, and that, because I think everyone at some point in their lives sometimes feels like they're not noticed, they're ignored and everything. And when someone like this is coming along saying that they have all this power, going above and beyond the power that any normal person should have, then it sort of creates behaviours like that. And I feel like it's really, really dangerous, especially for today's society. Because remember, Kat, you were saying something that you witnessed a group of young boys shouting things about this woman.
They were chanting his name. Like, I was literally at a firework display, and we were basically taking shelter in like the train in Wardown Park, so that's how you know like the kids were around, young kids, and they were like chanting his name, and I was like, wow, like people love this guy. And I think it's just kind of that, like male dominance, and that's what he's just putting forward, like, yeah, you're a man, but it's just like, I don't know, I think respect comes first.
It is that individual's had a big impact on some really impressionable people. Part of Safer Streets, we relaunched an education plan to go into all secondary schools and other schools, and we're working with a group called Our Streets Now, and such is the impact this person's had they've already created an education pack specifically around that type of behaviour and some of the messages that's been going out from that person and how it's inappropriate and how it's sort of how to adjust and behave and actually deal with that situation. So that's going to go in an update. We've literally received it this morning. So again, that's the impact that individuals had on quite a lot of young, impressionable people.
And education is key, and it's not just about traditional education in schools at whichever level, but it's education in the home as well.
Yeah.
It's about us having those conversations with our sons, our brothers, and just, you know, explaining standards of behaviour and what is and isn't acceptable.
And in the workplace as well, like we as part of the work that we're doing with male violence against women and girls, then we're trying to work with businesses, you know, to support them to say, actually, you know, this is the sort of type of behaviour that you might have in your workplace, these are the signals that you need to look out for, and this is what you need to do to support your staff. And likewise with the nighttime economy, you know, that's a big factor in terms of you know, people drinking alcohol and then perhaps being taken advantage of. Well, actually, let's educate taxi drivers and people that work behind the bars and door staff and everything, so that they understand what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, and also the signals to look out for to make sure that they're, you know, being an upstander, not a bystander.
You should be able to go to school, go to work and feel safe.
Yeah.
And that's why we really want to work with the communities, and in particular businesses within the area as well, so they understand what they need to put in place to make sure that the working environment's safe for people.
I think sometimes even not just like work environment, sometimes even stepping out of your house you can feel unsafe, because I remember there was this period of time, I think things sort of just changed for me and one of my friends. Like nearly any time we'd go out there would be people in their cars just shouting stuff at us, and it was very, very uncomfortable. And it was like we weren't even 18 yet, we were like 17, and people were saying these sorts of things. And the amount of people, I think nearly every single girl has a story of something that has happened. You guys are nodding, even Phil's nodding, and he's not even a girl. But I think everyone sort of has those stories, and I mean, it's not right and it's not acceptable. So I definitely do think that you guys sort of saying like the things that are being put into place to help educate people, they're so important and they're really needed.
Yeah, it kind of shows there's a brighter future. So talking about, you know, not feeling safe going out, could you talk to us a bit about the Sarah Everard case and your thoughts on it, and even, you know, most recently, Carrick, who, you know, what do we think about these kind of people in power? Because, you know, we should be able to have these people as our safety nets. And also you were saying earlier that, you know, you were quite surprised when you saw there wasn't rises in domestic abuse, and you kind of feel like it's because maybe people weren't reporting it. Like, you know, why is this?
Yeah. So in terms of Carrick and Wayne Cousins in relation to Sarah Everard, I mean, I'm devastated that that's happened. You know, I know why I joined policing, and these individuals have gone out of their way to purposely, you know, use their position, use their influence to harm people. And what that's done for public confidence in policing is just, you know, it's going to take us such a long period of time to claw that back and make people feel safe, you know, and it makes you really question you know, these individuals and the fact that nobody, you know, that they were in the organisations for so long without being able to be identified.
So we're doing a lot of work internally around that, because if we want our communities to have that trust and confidence in us to come forward, then we need to be really open and transparent about what our organisation looks like. So something that we've created, founded really by Rachel, is Bluebell. And Bluebell is an initiative whereby we support, it's a collective group of peers, different ranks and roles across our organisation. We have some external people as members as well. And the whole idea of that group is to raise awareness, provide training around inappropriate sexual behaviour in the workplace, but really to encourage people to come forward and report it, and, you know, be an upstander and to call out that behaviour, because if we can't get it right internally, then how are we ever going to give you the confidence to come forward and talk to us? And with, you know, what we have seen with the launch of Bluebell, if people are coming forward, people are calling out that behaviour, and whilst when we find out that something else has happened, we are absolutely, you know, horrified by it, but at least we can deal with it, and we have to deal with it, and we need to be really robust about it. And I think, unfortunately, whilst policing is made up from members of society, you are going to get that bad individual. But I think Cousins and Carrick are disgraceful, and there is no place for that within public service, and certainly not within the police force. So Bluebell is there to really promote that it's not acceptable, but to really give people that confidence and support from the start of their journey for however long they need us to support them, to be able to have that confidence and feel safe and secure to be able to talk to us.
Yeah, so obviously people can approach us and say, this has happened, or it might even be that supervisors of your organisation have seen something or heard something, they just want a bit of advice and support. So we're just giving people that confidence and, looking after them whilst they take that step forward to report it, so that we can deal with it properly. And there's no place for these individuals within our organisation, absolutely not.
And I think hearing things like that are amazing, because obviously we always hear the bad things that are going on, but I feel like the good things that are going on, like obviously this thing that you guys have put together, I think sometimes things like this can be slightly overlooked. Yeah. But I think bringing light and attention to something like this is a step in the right direction. Yeah. It's a way forward.
And I think it's important to say as well that Carrick and Cousins have happened, and we put Bluebell in before those cases sort of even came to the forefront, because we knew that there was a problem, and we're only really externally speaking about it now because we want people to feel confident in us that we're addressing these behaviours. So I think it was about the end of 2020, beginning of 21 where it sort of came to its fruition. But in the last, so probably around since that time, we've had 6 individuals that have been dismissed or resigned, and then the subsequent processes have followed through, which means that even if they've resigned, then they would have been dismissed anyway. So we've had 6 individuals, police officers, and they are all men.
Sorry, within Bedfordshire Police?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and they are all men. We have before had, we've had people that have been reported that are female as well. So this isn't just, it is predominantly men, but we have dealt with females before as well. But the 6 people were all men.
Did you guys know any of them personally?
Yeah, so I knew one of them personally, and that's probably why I wanted to create Bluebell. Because they were a really good friend of mine, and I didn't know any of this was happening. He used his position to influence for sexual gain, to be able to throw hooks out to certain individuals to try and reel them in, for want of a better term. And when I found out, I was absolutely devastated, because they were a friend of mine, and it was reported in the press. It's not a secret. That massively affected me. It just probably just as much as the recent cases, which are absolutely abhorrent. But that was a real kick in the teeth for me as well. That I didn't even this person had lied to me, and that was the thing that he'd done obviously this, and he'd harmed some individuals. Not when I say harmed, I mean like the sexual misconduct element. But for him to lie to me, that was a massive thing.
I'm sorry you had to go through that. That sounds like a lot. That sounds really heavy as well. Yeah. Do you know sort of how to spot these sorts of behaviours? Like lying, manipulating? Because I think that's something personally that I'm trying to work on as well. I'm so awful with it.
When you're growing up, man,
I know.
Just get the overtime.
I'm still sort of I'm very, very gullible. I sort of believe everything that anyone says, and I know that's a really bad trait, and I'm trying to sort of get over that. Do you guys have any advice, obviously, because I know you said you knew someone personally as well? Are there any signs or anything?
I think the problem is these individuals are very clever about how they do things, and I knew 1 or 2 of them personally as well, not to the level that Rachel did, but I knew them, I worked with them, and when the news came out you went, oh my God, really? I was having a cup of tea with them last week, and you don't see those traits, you don't see those signs, because they're very clever about how they do it, and they cover their tracks. So it is really difficult, and actually we're all gullible, we all believe people, until the likes of this, it breaks in the news, you go, oh my God, what happened?
And you want to see the good in people, don't you?
And I think we've all joined the police force wanting to make a difference and make a change. And when news of these individuals come out in the press, it hurts us more than it hurts probably other people, because actually we relate to where their position they've been in authority, and we think, well, how can individuals have that mindset? What turns them into being that type of person? And you won't see the traits. They get through the vetting because they cover their tracks and all that sort of thing. And it's not until later on that someone's brave enough to stand up and actually say, look, this has happened to me, I need support. And I think that's what we're all trying to achieve, whether it's internally within the police or with our communities that we serve. We want to give people the voice to turn around and say, look, we need help, we need support, this has happened to me. And you need to trust that we will react to it and we will deal with those people appropriately. And that's what we're trying, I think we're all trying to do internally and externally, is to build up that trust and get people, no matter who they are, to turn around and go, it was me, this has happened. And until we do that, I don't think we'll see a change in behaviour because we're not tackling those perpetrators.
And sometimes behaviour, especially with relationships, is subtle. And sometimes it's those people that are closest to you that probably see it more than you do. But it's, you know, think about things when people are being secretive. You know, all of a sudden you're not seeing your friends. You're being told what to wear. You don't have access to your own money. You know, you absolutely should be able to go through life with a partner that you choose and also a nice group of friends. And you should be able to have both in life. And sometimes things creep up on people without realising, and all I would say is, you know, look out for each other.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice, and I think it's kind of enlightening because I think obviously when we watch it on TV we're kind of thinking, oh, look at these police officers, like, oh, they must all be bad, but like hearing it from you three, it's like, no, this has actually touched you probably more deeper than it's touched us, because you actually know this like person, and it's like, wow.
And that's why it's upsetting, because, you know, any type of public service, majority of people take an oath to protect and serve, and when you have people like the two that we've discussed, it does affect you because they're part of your extended family, because policing is like a family, especially in Bedfordshire, because it's small, everyone knows each other. So when you have somebody that absolutely destroys that trust that we all work so hard to try and build and maintain, it has to have an impact.
I want the community of Bedfordshire to have confidence in us, and confidence in policing means, you know, having faith in us. You know, if we think back to, I don't know if you know this, but a chap called Sir Robert Peel was the individual that founded the police, and the Peeling principles, and he always said, you know, the police are the public and the public are the police.
I actually do
and
know
we have to, you know, we police 100%. You know, we don't want to go out there and be tyrants. You know, we have to police in the realms of the law. We have to do it fairly. And yeah, it's so important. It's so important that people have faith in us.
Yeah, I think so, because like I think like you lot should be our heroes. Like that's how we should, you know, view you lot. But how do you deal with this? Like, you know, like knowing this stuff as a police officer. How do you go back and how do you tackle these issues between yourselves, also as being women?
Well, it's an interesting one, and certainly with following both the case in regards to Wayne Cousins, and then afterwards with David Carrick as well, I felt the need to write from a personal perspective to the police force in Bedfordshire, not only as a female or as a senior leader, but also as a mother, as a wife, just about how impactful this is, because it really does affect the morale within policing when something like this happens. So we approach it in a number of ways. So there's things that we write personally about our views and how we feel it's affected, and we try and, you know, remind our colleagues that it's a really small number. Whatever that number is, it's too many, but we're not all the same, and the majority of police officers absolutely do want to provide a really good service to the public. But then we also kick-started off Bluebell, and it's about reaching out to communities. It's about coming and talking to people like yourselves, about trying to build that trust and confidence. But like Rachel said, when something like this happens, it's kind of like we've taken one step forward and now we've taken several million back again. And it's kind of relentless, but we've got to come in and we've got to speak to our communities and be visible. You need to see who we are and what it is that we represent. And for us internally, it's making sure that we drive a really inclusive culture where there is no place whatsoever for this type of behaviour, but that people understand what it is that we represent. and the values that we hold.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely everything that's going on and everything that's happened. I actually had a group of police come into where I work, so Nando's, and I was having a conversation with them. I was sort of like asking them about, you know, what they do and everything, and they said to me that a lot of people my age, like, they've dealt with them, they've had to work with them, and they were completely anti-police. So they sort of weren't listening to the things that they were saying. So I think everything that you guys are saying now in this conversation that you're having with us, it's really good that we sort of get an understanding of how you guys think and how it's not all of the police, not the majority of the police, and the majority of the police actually want to help. So on that note, we're gonna go off and play some music now for about 3 minutes, and we will join you back after that. So thanks for listening, guys.
LUR.
Hi guys, so we're Youth Ambassadors Kat and
Maytab.
we're back with police officers, Bedfordshire representatives, Dee, Rachel and Phil. And we're going to be asking just some more like light-hearted questions, just getting to know more about policing, being you lot, how it is to be in your roles. And yeah, Maytab.
Yeah, so I think you said light-hearted, but I kind of want to start off with quite a deep one.
All right. Sorry guys, not light-hearted.
So obviously what you guys do is amazing, you know, working with women and, you know, sort of trying to help them out and, you know, male violence. So could you guys give us any examples of a real difference that you feel that you've made in policing, like all three of you?
Well, I don't mind going first, but I'm going to be a little bit different in terms of there is something that we are currently working on with 9 Red, and I'm not going to go into it in detail because it's a bit of a surprise, but it's going to be some really interesting working in partnership. And if I can be cheeky, I'd quite like to come back in March with 9 Red and tell you all about it. Because I think it's going to be really impactful and make a huge difference.
We're getting thumbs up, that would be lovely.
Okay. I think I'm going to go quite tactical because, you know, I've met some amazing, brave people that have been involved in some absolutely horrific things. So I think it was probably back in 2003 or 2004. I've been in the job for 20 years now, but there's some jobs that will stay with you forever. And I remember, so I was an initial contact officer, so that basically means that I'm specially trained to go and speak to a rape victim. So I got a call to go to a location in Bedford, and a female, and this is really rare by the way, she'd been attacked in a car park, so a complete stranger had raped her, and so I literally, you know, scooped her off the ground and took her back to headquarters, where I then spent the rest of my whole shift, so another 12 hours with her, you know, speaking to her, gaining her trust, you know, talking her through what was going to happen, her medical, you know, getting all the information possible so that we could go and apprehend this individual, which we were able to do in the next couple of days after the attack. And I remember he got 11 years at Crown Court. You know, he was arrested, put before the court, and he got 11 years. And that's probably one of my most, you know, I will always remember that. I'll always remember that lady, our conversations, you know, and that I was there for her on that night. That was a massive thing for me. Massive.
Wow, I mean, I'm sure she like appreciates that so much, and it's quite nice that you remember it as well as you do. But yeah,
you remember all of your jobs.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the work that you guys do, because it's so impactful, and I bet it's just so meaningful towards the people that you help and yourselves as well. Because I can imagine that there's a lot of sort of fulfilment that you get from doing things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll let Phil go next, but you know, there is people will see us, you know, the face of the police as the stop search and on the social media, and you know, stopping the cars, and then you know we get the abuse, but. You know, I've held someone while they're dying. You know, I've held a lady's hand after her baby had died. You know, death and destruction happens every day to people, and it's us that are there to pick it up. And you know, if a house has been burgled, then, you know, go around there and speak to you and get all the evidence. You know, there's some absolutely, you know, unfortunately, we see the best of society, but we also see the worst as well.
Wow.
For me, I mean, I've been around Bedfordshire Police for about 28 years now. And previously, I worked in the force control room and dealt with victims over the phone and stuff like that. So, yeah, some really impactful incidents around people in distress. With my latest role as a project manager, safer streets for me is probably one of those things that I think I can make a difference. We're doing community engagements, we're going out and meeting members of the public, promoting safety in the street. You can go about your daily business, go about having a cup of tea or going out at night with your friends without the fear of being wolf whistled, catcalled, touched, harmed. So for me, the education pack we're launching is key to changing that attitude and that behaviours in the long term. But we done a stall at Bedford train station one evening, and a young girl, 17's, travelled back from London. She came up to myself, it was another member of staff, and said, I've just been abused by two males in their 50s on the train coming back from London. This was 5, 6 o'clock at night. She came to us. If we hadn't been there, she wouldn't have reported it. She'd have gone home and she'd have suffered in silence. So just that one interaction makes everything I do worthwhile. If I can times that by 10 or 100 or 1,000, brilliant. So for me, the Safer Streets project is quite a personal one. I want to make a change, and I want to make people confident in the police that they can come and report to us, talk to us, rather than sort of walk across the street if they see a policeman. So that's for me.
And it's about giving people as well their opportunity to share their lived experience, and it's giving people our time and listening to them. And something that we host quite regularly now is the Survivor's Voice, where we get people to come in and they talk to various people across our organisation about their story and what happened to them. And it helps us as well in terms of how we deal with the public in the future. And, you know, constantly learning from what's gone before us, but it's just giving the public, you know, our time and being that listening ear as well. And I always remember years ago somebody said to me, because a lot of my background's public protection, and they always said to me, how on earth do you work on child protection? You know, the things you must see. And for me, it's quite simple, because the minute we get involved, whatever's happened, it's stopped.
Wow.
I think it's so special, like what you guys do, and I feel like if I was like in your spot, I'd feel like, you know, just really happy with what you do, because it just sounds so important that there's individuals like you within our force. And like, I mean, I know I would feel so much like more comfortable, like I feel more comfortable knowing that it's you guys behind the scene. And how would you, like, what would you say to people who want to be a police officer? Because it sounds quite what's that word? Like when...
Intense.
No, not intense.
Maybe.
Like, it's like, it's something to bring home to yourself. Like, you've made a change in society, an impact.
Yeah. Well, we'd encourage people to come to any of our open events. There's lots of information online as well. But
please share that information with us.
We will do, thank you for that,
forward,
definitely. Yeah. But if you're considering it, motivate, do something about it. Don't and ah and ponder about it. Come along, get some information and sign up, because we really want to be representative of our communities, and we can't do that until more and more people join us.
Yeah.
And we always need more people.
Yeah, I think people in our community are quite deterred, like, it's like, what, you're going to be a Fed? Like,
yeah, there's a lot of that. I think a lot of that within the youth, like a lot of us don't sort of see what you guys do. I mean, for me, when I was growing up, I think up until I got social media pretty much, like I never even heard badly about the police. I think I was very like sort of hidden away from all, like everything that people would say about it, because with me, if I saw police out there on the street, I'd be like, oh, naturally I feel safer. But then I got social media and I started seeing everything that, the youth were saying. I sort of grew up a bit and sort of opened my ears to a lot of the things that people were saying at my age. And I mean, obviously a lot of those issues do exist, but how do you guys sort of intend to portray yourselves in a way that sort of deters people from having that image of you guys?
I think you know, you've mentioned social media. Social media, you know, it doesn't always give the best view of certain situations. You know, it can be doctored, only part and parcel. You know, it's absolutely right that we are held to account, and we, you know, we are transparent in everything that we do now. You know, through, I've talked about Stop and Search briefly. So Stop and Search, we've got a scrutiny panel where, you know, the community themselves come together and they scrutinise what we do. We've got use of force panel, and actually now we've got our male violence against women and girls scrutiny panel, where we've got a panel of individuals that go through cases to determine if it was the most appropriate outcome. So social media's had a massive part to play in that, and I just think, you know, it isn't all about you know, the Stop and Search, or, you know, police coming and doing someone a wrong-un, for want of a better term. It's about us, you know. We want to communicate, we want to have conversations. You know, I don't want everyone to just think, oh, the police, I don't want to talk to the police. You know, we really want to help people, because there's people like me, Dee and Phil that are out there that really want to do the best for society. You know, and we talked about people joining the police. Policing isn't just about being a police officer. There's so many opportunities within policing. You know, Phil obviously mentioned that he worked in our force contact centre. You know, we've got scenes of crimes officers, we've got investigation officers that aren't police officers. There's so much out there for people to do. I started a work experience programme last year, and it only runs once every year, and it's aimed at 14 to 16-year-olds. The application closed today, but obviously next year it will go out again. And the people that came were a real mix of Bedfordshire children, and they were like, we didn't even know that half of this existed. So it's really important for people to understand that policing isn't just about a uniform and us going and stopping and searching people and doing a variety of other things. It's about us getting out there into our communities and listening, as Dee said, but also making sure that people are heard.
I think it's about people being part of that organisation to make those changes. Be part of that change. But actually, if you don't join up to an organisation, whether it's the police or a business, you can't make a change. So actually join up and be part of that change.
Come and look at what we do.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, being part of change is a massive reason, I'm assuming, as to why you guys got into what you do. But, like, on a personal level, could each and every one of you sort of go into a bit of what drives you to sort of make that change and, like, to show that kindness to the world that is lacking massively in it?
I think I'll go back to what Dee said. I'm a mum, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister. You know, I live in Bedfordshire. My mum will tell you, I always wanted to join the police ever since I was like 3 years old, and I wanted to catch the bad guys and help people. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to look up the bad guys and help people. And, you know, I wanted to get a burglar bill, and so it's so important to me, because I want, you know, like when I'm not on duty, I can put myself on duty, but I'm a member of the community as well, and, you know, I want the police service to do everything it can for the community, because it might be my sister or my dad or my mum picking that phone up, and so it's really important to me that, you know, we do give a really good service for everyone.
And I think it's the same for me, and I always knew that I'd either be a police officer or I'd go in the army.
Oh, wow.
And at the risk of eternal embarrassment, this came from a combination of Starsky and Hutch and chips. Now, if you're old enough, you'll know what I'm talking about. You two clearly don't.
No idea.
Maytab's like,
I don't either.
However, so it did come from that. So I always knew I was going to do something, and not long after I joined, and I did my initial sort of 2 years in probation, as we called it then, I became a firearms officer. And I've always kind of had this desire to work in that area, and I've kept it, and now I'm a strategic firearms commander. So you join for a number of reasons, and mine was definitely, I like the idea of the badge, I like the idea of uniform, guns, driving fast cars. However, the biggest reason and pull is for public service. It's because you want to make a difference and you want to give back to society. And like Phil said, if you're not happy and you want to make a decision, you've got to take action, you've got to speak up. And that's also why I've got that drive to go through the ranks as well, because I want to be in a position where I can make a change. And for me, it's doing whatever I can to prevent unnecessary criminalisation, for me especially of women coming into the criminal justice system, and to remove disproportionality and racism from everything that we do. And it isn't easy, and we need to work together to do it.
I think it's so, I feel so happy just listening. Like, I feel really inspired, I'm not going to lie. And also, hearing from two female officers, I think, because we were talking earlier about the role of police back in the day compared to now, like, the fact that you two can be firearm officers, what do you feel like?
Hold on, she was.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
I can't shoot for toffee.
Sorry. Wait, so have you actually shot a gun, like...
Not
proper.
at someone, but you have to shoot them to train. But I think what I would take from that is, regardless of whether it's policing or anything you do in life, everything is possible if you work for it. And I always knew that if I'd gone into the police route, that I would go into the armed policing. And you know, when I joined armed policing, I'm showing my age a little bit, it was in 1999. You know, girls didn't really carry guns then.
Oh, wow.
But it was something that I always wanted to do. So, and I've done a number of other jobs which I would say are probably male-dominated areas of work. But just go for it. Be true to yourself, always. And, yeah, if you really want something, you've got to go out and reach it.
We can overcome the barriers, you know, and like, I have people that are maybe a bit older in life, or, you know, they've had children when they're young, and then they're saying, oh, I don't know if I could do this, I don't know if I could juggle it. You absolutely can juggle your kids, you know, you can do it. It's no, you know, there's no issues at all in, well, you know, you've got to sort out your childcare, but you can, obviously, you can do it. You know, I'll manage to do it, there's other people that manage to do it, and, you know, there's a lot of support out there.
And the good thing about policing is, you have the same employer, but you can choose so many different jobs. And, you know, I feel really privileged to have had the opportunities that I've had within policing and do so many jobs. And, you know, my view is move around every 2 to 3 years, broaden your horizons, get some more experience, have fun, but make a difference and give back what you can and take that time to listen to people. Because if we don't listen, we don't learn.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to get a little bit philosophical now, but do you guys have sort of any idea as to what differentiates you and sort of your positive thinking into how you want to make a change in society, and those who do like the wrong in society, you know, like criminals and everything? Because everyone, sorry to cut you off, but everyone goes through bad times and everything. People have bad experiences, and you can either go one way and, like, I don't know, do bad with it and become a criminal, or you can either do good with it and say that I want to make sure that this never happens again to anyone else, and I want to make sure that I do whatever I can to prevent this from happening, like you guys have. So do you sort of know what differentiates that?
It's difficult to pinpoint a point in time. I think it's probably peer pressure. I think it's sometimes a cultural thing, especially when joining the police. As you said earlier, you don't want to go and join the police, but they're bad ones. And again, the bad press we get. I think we all join to make a difference. And for me personally, I found my role over the last 28 years very rewarding. You help people out in their hardest times.
That's the word I was thinking.
And not everyone gets that opportunity to make that bigger impact on people's lives.
But I also think it's really important to say that policing isn't the be-all and end-all in terms of we can't solve the problems, we've got to do it in partnership with other people. So, you know, if people don't want to go into policing, then there's loads of different avenues that they can go into, you know, to support addiction, you know, substance abuse, go into teaching, you know, there's so many different areas out there, but it's quite a hard question to answer that in terms of what differentiates. I just think
why are people
I don't think there's one thing that you can put your finger on that makes that difference between me and someone else.
I think you're just good people.
We've all got our drivers in life. We've all got our fire inside us that drives us to do something.
Yeah, that's what I was sort of getting at. Do you think it's something that's innate within different people? I don't know, it's very philosophical.
Well, possibly, but then, like I said, we have, you know, at the moment we've heavily recruited for the last 18 months to 2 years, but we've got people coming in from all different walks of life, you know, the people that have got the most vast experience within our communities that can really come and bring something different to the party. So, you know, and they went and they chose a different career, but then that fire has obviously grown within them, and then they wanted to join the police. So it's I think it's a bit of both, really. But then I think that people, like Dee said, people are then, you know, want to take action. They want to go and do something and make a change by joining up. So, yeah.
And we need to, you know, encourage youngsters, and we need to provide opportunity and fair opportunity to young people, because, you know, even now, people have different opportunities, and I think it can be really difficult for people. And that's not necessarily a policing issue to resolve, but as a community as a whole, we need to make sure that we are making opportunities available for people, and that people understand that with decisions and choices comes consequences. And we talk about it a lot within social media, and in particular with pictures, and everyone talks about not putting images out on your phones, not sending inappropriate pictures, for example, to people, because once they're out there, but how many people send that image in the belief that they're sending it to somebody that they will be able to trust forever?
Yeah, it's true. Be safe.
And it's just taking that time just to consider what it is that we're doing. But I really think we need to be encouraging people to, look at what opportunities are around, but making those opportunities fairer, more available to people.
Yeah, I think it is important, because I don't think enough of us know where to go seek those opportunities, and then there's the trust, but I think, as you said, talking is the first step, communication, because I can tell that you're all good people and I would trust you, so I think that's that's definitely a first step.
But we want people to have their say. For example, we've got community policing, so we've got members that are ring fenced into going about and dealing with local problems.
Yeah.
And we have the same people from neighbourhoods coming out and telling us what their problems are, and that that's one particular demographic, and we really want to hear from everybody else. So if go on our website and make sure you fill in that Have Your Say survey, because it might be that in your local community, in your town, in your village, wherever you live, that 10 people have said, well, actually the problem's speeding, but actually 15 of you and your friends will say, well, no, actually it's knife crime and we want some action in relation to that. So we really want people to talk to us, to tell us what the problems are, so that we can do something about it.
Okay, yeah.
Well, and I think, obviously, I've said this 3 times already, but what you guys do is amazing. How do you guys sort of deal with the heaviness that comes with your job to make sure that you guys are, okay?
Interesting one. Obviously we talk a lot to each other, but we actually, because we've chosen this, it's a vocation. We kind of thrive on it, really.
That's good.
And you just find a way to deal with it. And it's a bit like I said earlier with the child protection thing. Hopefully, the majority of the time when we get involved, whatever's gone on, you might not be able to undo what's happened before, but from that moment onwards, that hopefully you're making a difference, and in some cases you're stopping anything else from happening. So for me, it's reflecting on the difference that you can make and the change that you can make, rather than focusing on what kind of day I had, because it's not about me.
Yeah.
It's about all of you lovely people out in the community and what we can do to make your days better.
Yeah, I like that.
And we're really lucky because we do different skills as well. So if like you just said about the heaviness, so we might have a day where we're full of disappointment in relation to Carrick and Cousins and stuff like that. But because of the different things that we do, so we might be working Luton Town Football Club the next day and commanding that, or we've got a firearms job. So we're not always necessarily dealing with the same thing. We get to see the goods, we get to see the bads, and we get to see our thriving workforce, which Dee mentioned earlier. She got promoted because she wants to make sure that we've got the right direction for individuals and to make a change and a difference, and I want to pull people up behind me and develop those officers that are going to go out and deal with our communities.
I think it also is how do you manage yourself between work and home life, and it's using that time. As soon as you leave the building, where possible, you leave it there. Use that travelling time when you go home to just try and clear your head a bit. Think of the positives rather than negatives, but actually it can eat away at you if you get too engrossed. And I know some officers do. It can eat away at you, and it can take a toll on you and your family.
But
so
we've got amazing support now, wellbeing support in place that we didn't have 20 years ago when we were out and about.
Now, and again, it's personal responsibility as well. Do some fitness, chat to your friends, whatever it is that works for you, and just well, for me, it's reflecting on the difference that we're making. For you, it's probably going on your Peloton.
Yeah, I do like a bit of exercise.
Just a little closing question. What would you say is the most unique thing about your job?
Oh, see, at the moment, my job, so I've been with the Chief for 3 years. We've just obviously, Mr Forsyth left us in September, and we've got Mr Rodenhurst now, but yeah, my job is amazing because I get to have a chat with the Chief Constable every day, and you know he's an amazing chap who is the NPCC lead for serious organised crime as well. So you know he's got a wealth of knowledge, and I can have a chat with him every day, get a bit of knowledge from him, and also tell him what's going on in our communities and with my workforce. So that's quite unique, I think, for me, because not many people get to do it.
Wow.
Oh, unique. That's a good one. And it's interesting because I'm not convinced that we are kind of unique, really, because what we do is what we do day in, day out. I suppose we're used to it. But for me, it would be knowing that I can influence our standards and the way in which we investigate crime, but more importantly, influence the way in which we treat victims, and making sure that everything we do places victims at the centre of it, and having responsibility for crime and public protection allows me the opportunity really to influence those changes and make it better and ensure that our service is one that's not only reflective of our communities and meets the needs of victims, but really does put them at the heart of what we do.
I think for me, unique again, as Dee said, it's quite hard to say it's unique. But it's making a difference. It's working with communities, it's working with partner agencies, working with the police force, and driving change. As Rachel said, 20 years ago, we didn't have that welfare support. Due to people within the force, they've made that change. We've got welfare support now, which is fantastic. We're now working against male violence against women and girls. We're making that change. So again, it's being part of that workforce to lead that change and influence that change, actually make a difference.
So I think that's all that it comes down to at the end of the day, you know, making a difference.
Yeah.
I think once you've got that sort of drive to do things like that in your life, then I think that's really good because it fills you with a sense of purpose and fulfilment. So, but genuinely, seriously, thank you so much for coming on today, guys.
I've really enjoyed speaking to all of you, and I feel like I've got a kind of different, like it gives me hope that there is, like, I'm sure there's lots of people, but just meeting you lot and knowing that, you know, you want to make change, you have made change, you're making change is great. Like, it's really good.
Yeah, genuinely, I think there's so much that, I mean, me and Kat can personally take away from this conversation, in the sense that what you guys do is amazing in terms of the police force and the sort of representation that you guys are putting yourselves out to be. I think that is amazing. I wish pretty much nearly everyone I know, like especially Kat will back me up here, people of our generation, if they could somehow see and like witness this conversation and get a better understanding of what you guys are about, I think the respect for the police would increase massively, because a lot of people don't see this side to you guys, and they've seen the human side, which I think is amazing. So on that note, thank you so much for listening today, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We've been your hosts, Maytab and
Kat.
and this has been the Public and the Police. So thank you so much, guys. I hope you enjoy the rest of your night.
Tuning every Tuesday of the month.